This is a fan-generated show. If you'd like to support us, please go to jamieglazoff.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our new Rumble channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm thrilled to announce the release of my new book, Obama's True Legacy: How He Transformed America. There's a reason why Mike Huckabee calls it a ferocious and chilling read. Order it now at Amazon.com or at FrontPageMag.com.
Thank you for joining the Glazoff gang. I'm Michael Lauber, sitting in today for Dr. Jamie Glazoff. I want to thank him for the opportunity to be here with all of you. I also want to remind you guys that we are a fan-generated show. We count on donations from loyal viewers like you in order to bring you the stories that the mainstream media doesn't want to cover, would prefer to ignore, like a lot of what we're going to get into today with our guest, Scarlett Karoleva. Now, before we do that, I do want to remind you guys to go to jamieglazoff.com to make a contribution to help us to continue the Glazoff gang. Again, we don't rely on advertisers. We rely on your generosity to bring you this program. So without further ado, I want to introduce our guest to you, Scarlett Karoleva. Scarlett, how are you doing today?
Couldn't be better. Always happy to be in your show.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Scarlett's a journalist out of the Netherlands that covers a variety of stories in Europe. And today we're going to bring you some of the hot topics over there, especially getting into this digital ID in the UK, where you've seen people rise up against it. But it's not going to just be the UK. This is going to spread through all of Europe. So Scarlett, if you could kind of give us the background on that, and then let's jump right into this conversation.
I mean, there's so much to discuss about it. First and foremost, you would expect that because the UK left the European Union, they would be able to escape the digital identity. But it's even farther from the truth. Now, the reason why Keir Starmer is saying that they need to have a digital identity, it will be mandatory, is because this will help them combat illegal working forces. You cannot make this stuff up. This man is creating a problem and now he is quote unquote finding a solution for it. Basically, I don't have to tell you, and the people who are watching this at home, what the dangers are of the digital identity. But it is a pattern that we see. They create a problem and they so claim to have a solution for it. It is really the abuse of the mass migration crisis that he has caused. Now, there's a silver lining in it. It is that people they understand the danger of this digital identity. They will call it a Brit card. And they are saying, we don't want this. You know, they started a petition a couple of days ago, and they're now on
Yes.
7 million signatures, which is incredible. It's for me, if you would ask me, it's one of the best way as a citizen we can use our democratic rights. The question is, will Keir Starmer do something with this? I highly doubt it because this man, he doesn't care about anyone or anything. Like, he is really ruling as a tyrant. And you know what? Actually, I almost want to say thank you, Keir Starmer, because this man is digging his own grave. I didn't know it was possible to be this unpopular, yet every day his popularity rate is dropping.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Keir Starmer is about as popular as syphilis right now.
Yeah.
His approval ratings have cratered. So is their government. The people are tired of the abuses. But yeah, the digital ID is an insidious evil. You know, this is something we talked about during COVID when they wanted vaccine passports and they wanted to begin linking your bank account with your ID so that you were saying the wrong things, unpopular opinions, there could be repercussions. We've also seen this roll out with this Digital Censorship Act over in the UK. You know, we've pushed back against it here, but this is something these globalists really want in every country. They want your identity online tied to your identity in the real world. So if you say something that they don't like you're tired of the illegal immigrant invasion, that they can come give you a visit, knock on your door, seize your devices. And this is really about controlling messaging, controlling thought, and silencing any dissent to their goals. This is going to be an extreme danger. And if it gets rolled out in the UK, it's going to spread through the rest of Europe. It'll be in Australia and South Africa and a variety of other countries initially. But really what they want is this adopted by the whole world so they can control your bank account, your energy, your health care, where you can travel, how far you can travel. They want the problem with digital ID is it is the linkage that pulls all these other things together and does create this surveillance state that we're all living through right now.
Well, it goes even beyond that. It is one thing to live in a surveillance state. This will lead to the last step of totalitarianism, which is that you will self-censor you. And look at Europe, we have Ursula von der Leyen. There's a second scandal of her deleting messages, crucial messages, because the messages you and I send might be just uh, a bad meme or a bad joke, but what she's
Yeah.
sending to her friends like Macron and Keir Starmer, those involves billions worth of deals. We get zero transparency in that. Now in the EU, they want to have chat control, which means that the government will have access to all of your messages, WhatsApp, Signal, even your drive, so your Google Drive, OneDrive, you name it. And they say now, this jet control, that it's needed because it will help to combat, I don't want to use the word, like things that is involving
CP.
child. Exactly. And I mean, this is the thing, they abuse a problem, but it's not a real reason behind it. They just want to have full control over you. But it's very hypocrite. They get away with all of these criminal activities. We get zero transparency. There's no democracy without any transparency. Because there was actually a journalist that requested to see those messages that she sent between her and Macron. He had to wait 15 months, and then his request was denied by the European Commission. At the other hand, they want to have full access to see what you're sending. First and foremost, it's not gonna solve the problem of child.
Yeah, CP.
Exactly,
Um,
CP. I was looking for that word. Thank you. It's not gonna, because they're gonna have an overkill of data that even the police doesn't know how to structure and do, or like really know how to have control over that data.
well,
Second of all, what you're going to do is that you're going to self-censor yourself because you're going to be aware of the fact that the government is reading everything that you're sending, all the pictures that you're uploading into the cloud. So it is good that the people of the UK are standing up for themselves, because if we don't do it now and we lose our freedoms, it's gone and we'll never get it back. Once your
and I want
freedom
to
is gone, it's gone.
Exactly. Yeah. It may be a situation you vote yourself into, but a lot of times, once they've stripped enough of your freedoms away, you have to shoot your way out of the situation. And that's not really an option for them. But I want to hone in on something you said, because again, this Online Safety Act was sold to the people of the UK as a way to prevent child pornography, child trafficking, things like that, that people would have to uh, their online identity would be registered with their real world identity. But that's never been the real purpose. There's other ways to solve that problem without going to these kind of draconian measures. But what it was really about is setting the foundation for what we're seeing now, and that's digital ID, linking even more systems up. So we're already seeing, what is it? I think I saw an average of 200 people per week arrested just in the UK for online violations. All of you guys have seen the videos of them knocking on doors, sometimes in the middle of the night, dragging people out. Everybody saw the one about where they took young ladies, I think 14, 15-year-old girl, wanted her cell phone, not because of something she posted, because she looked at something online that was considered inappropriate. So, I mean, you're exactly right. Like, this is really about thought control. It's about scaring people away from standing up against things they don't like or they don't want to see, whether that's the migrant invasion or any criticism of UK's globalist government.
But currently, the migrant invasion is the biggest one that we're facing, and they don't want you to have any critique on it. Look
Yes.
at Europe, and not just only the UK, but every European country. It is burning. It is
Hmm.
burning. We do not have any control of the flux of illegal aliens entering within our borders. A lot of them can be sleepers. We've seen it with the Manchester attack that's happening. The other day they had to shut down the opening of Oktoberfest because of an alleged bomb threats. That same evening, they thought they found a bomb within, or there were threats for a bomb at Zaventem, Brussels airport. We're almost going back to 2015 terrorist
Yeah.
levels. But the government don't want you to talk about it. Even in the Netherlands, where I am from, I am very proud to see that Dutch people are rising up because they want to open more and more asylum centers, even though we simply cannot allow these people to enter because they're causing the destruction of our society. They don't come here to respect our rules. I don't even have to talk about the things that they're doing to women, women having to take other routes to cycle at home back to their houses because they feel
Yeah.
unsafe. All of the criminal activities that they're doing within our borders, their government, they don't care about it. So there were some protests in the Netherlands against it, the failing asylum and migration policies. And unfortunately, a group of hooligans came and they escalated the situation. So, what did the government do? Instead of addressing the issue for what it is, the fact that they have failed us even though we wanted to close the borders and they refused to do that, they were talking about the hooligans.
Of
And
course.
now they said, oh, but we have a solution for that. We should have more CCTVs so we can control the people that are protesting. Well, in case they have forgotten, we are still a democracy, and in a democracy, you have a right to protest. And the fact that they want to control it is, like you said, it's a control state. Because the moment they see that you're there, they will register you. And once the digital identity will come, they will already have a track record. Ah, this person was in that moment there and there protesting against asylum centers, and you will already have a black page, which will make sure that you're already 5-0 behind in society. These are
Yeah.
terrifying times that we're living through, but we have to stand up. We have to stand up for our rights.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, the people have to have an ability to air their grievances. Um, but the fact that the government there now is it completely ignores a legitimate concern, and that is this invasion of boat migrants, of migrants from North Africa and the Middle East that are destroying the national cohesion, destroying the culture in a lot of these countries. And as like you just brought up Manchester. Not only did this guy whose first name was Jihad, I mean, go find a bigger clue that you're going to be a terrorist than you name your kid Jihad. Um, but afterwards, after this guy was killed by the police, who also unfortunately killed one of the parishioners, as we're learning now, or one of the people at the synagogue, the UK police unfortunately also killed and injured one person there. So he killed one person. The police brought him down, and then they had riots literally that night because the police stopped him from committing an even worse terrorist attack. But this is what happens when you fill London with people that aren't there to become British. They're not there to assimilate. They're there to spread their culture into your countries and to take over. And you guys are seeing this across Europe. We're seeing it on a lesser scale here in the United States, like with what just happened in Dearborn, Michigan, with the mayor and this conflict with the local priest or local church that was there. That he stood up in City Hall about he didn't want them naming streets after a known terrorist. I can't remember from what organization to honor him. He came up, said something about it, and the mayor essentially told him, Islam is supreme there, and he should leave, and he should get out, and it's not his city anymore. We're see the same in Minnesota, where there's total takeovers. But yeah, what you guys are dealing with in London, in France, or in Paris, in the Netherlands, in Germany, these increasing knife attacks, increasing violent jihadis, and instead, your governments are covering it up and they're attacking the citizens that are finally taking a stand and saying, we can't take the violence anymore. We can't take the non-integration. And we certainly can't continue to pay for all this as, the world's economy is right now in pain too. Locals are struggling to find jobs, but your tax dollars are going to support these illegal migrants that have come in and now are dominating a lot of the major cities throughout Europe.
It is terrible. Like even there's this case in the Netherlands where there's a politician in the European Parliament who is trying to postpone sending in a draft about an EU law which should make it easier to deport illegal aliens because we are almost having elections in the Netherlands and his party doesn't want to address the issue. They don't even want to address the issue of mass migration because it is bad for their PR, it's bad for their elections, and this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with politicians who care more about their own interests, making sure that they're still in power, which means that you can live this lavish lifestyle that we, by the way, are funding. And they have zero, they don't care about us. They don't care
No.
about the everyday people like you and I who are working hard, who have dedicated their lives to build up the country, only for it to be destroyed by mass migration. And this is the reason why we are in the mess that we are in.
Yes. And the fact that they treat citizens and politicians that take a stand against it like criminals in most of these countries, looking
Exactly.
for reasons to put them in jail. That's why, over here we keep talking about civil war because of what's going on with the violent left. But the UK and a number of other countries in Europe really are on the verge of of a civil war right now. They have absolutely had it in the UK. with
Yeah.
what's going on there, with rapes and assaults being covered up that are committed by a lot of these migrants, with the police standing against the citizens and instead backing the migrants, and just this general like Islamification of Europe in the UK. People are finally disgusted with it. It's taken them over 10 years to get to this point. But now that they are here and the government is standing against what is obviously the common good of the people, they are finally rising up. Now, do you think there is a real chance of that we'll start seeing more of a hot conflict in the UK, meaning there'll be more violence? Well, I guess really from both sides. And what do you think the dangers are of them actually getting to the point where essentially, if it's not a declared civil war, it's basically borderline?
I mean, look, at this point, I think the government almost wants the whole situation to escalate because they know what it means and they're going to allow more illegal aliens to enter the country. They know that people have had it because they cannot find social housing, the social security is completely gone. If you want to go to a doctor, you can wait in line for 2, 3 months until it's finally your turn. The social cohesion is completely deteriorated.
Yes.
If they really would want the whole situation to de-escalate, they would start listening to the people. And they've had many opportunities to do that. You saying, oh, the people of Europe have woken up for the finally after 10 years. No. Like even in the early 2000s, we had in the Netherlands Pim Fortuyn who was warning us about the dangers of mass migration and saying what the cultural and economic effects of that would be. And he was shot brutally. I always call him and refer to him as patient zero because he was the
I
first
remember
one
now.
who stood up and talking about the exact situation that we are living in right now. Imagine we would have listened to him 20, 23 years ago. So we've been saying it for decades, and for decades the politicians have been ignoring us. The elites have been ignoring us because they want the situation to escalate, and they have an agenda behind it. And that agenda is to abuse it as an excuse to have total control. Because now they can say, "Oh, look, you know what? What a chaos. But you know what? We will stop illegal migrants to enter with the digital identity. This is also the way we're going to make sure that you're safe. Just give us your freedoms."
Yes. Yeah. And those that will trade their freedoms for the illusion of safety will have neither. Um, and that is really the bottom line. Yeah, I think you summed it up very well right now. And I think if we do see real pushback, real from the people, from the natives of Europe, that will be used as an excuse to move in these draconian measures. So if you guys get in a fight over there, you better win it because the consequences are going to be the last of your freedoms. But hopefully it doesn't come to that. Now, Starmer's government's never going to survive. Whenever the next elections are, reform's going to come in. But my concern there is like we've seen other governments in the UK be seated, promise to do something to combat the boat migrants, the illegal immigration, but it never seems to actually come to fruition. I covered a story on my program on Ex American News a few weeks ago now about how they were finally going to do some of these migrant deportation flights. First day, reporters are down there, plane doesn't leave. Second day, nobody shows up to be deported. Third day, they finally had one poor guy they put on the plane. So whatever he did to earn that spot must have been really bad. But the rest of the plane was filled with reporters to cover it. I don't know that they ever started this, if they just scrapped it like they have other programs. Like they said they were going to start turning around the boat migrants. They did it a couple times. Then that ended too. Is there any hope that people can get any of this, their government to accomplish any of it, or is just going to be more and more promises? And if Nigel Farage and reform do come in, will they block him somehow and prevent him from doing anything about this?
Well, we have to be very realistic. If you want to have a policy like mass deportations, closing the borders, it's not only about changing who's in government, you have to change the entire system because the entire system right now is being dominated by the globalists. You're going to still have bureaucrats who's going to cry and say, oh, I don't want to deport people. And they will object doing so, even though they're living up, what is it, 100,000 pound per year, living like, living a good lavish lifestyle while the average day Joe is still dealing with the trash that they have have caused. So if you want to change that, you have to change the judicial system, you have to change the bureaucrats. Even, I mean, ideally, you go fully American style, right? You just cut the red tape and you have to change with the entire system. This is going to take decades. It's not even if Nigel Farage will become prime minister, and I really hope he will become prime minister because I do have good faith he can steer the situation around. It's going to take much longer than just a 4-year term.
Agreed. Yeah, to unwind all the damage that's been done, not just in the UK, but over all of Europe. Yeah, I think a lot of it too is going to be through your education system because people have been programmed that
Exactly.
this is what they're supposed to do. And same with like these policies. I mean, luckily we are seeing some pushback too on some of the environmental insanity that goes on in Europe. Um, but it's a whole mindset that has to change. There has to be a shift across every country in Europe, or this
Uh,
kind of tyranny is always going to be just over the horizon. Now, before we started to film here, you also mentioned we wanted to get into the Czech elections. So give me the rundown on that, and then we'll dig deeper.
Yeah, of course. So there's a lot of elections happening right now in Europe. We recently had last week elections in Moldova that were completely rigged by Ursula von der Leyen. We can tell that the globalists, they have perfectionized their way of rigging elections, imprisoning opponents, making sure that they cannot even make it to the ballot. And now, today, yesterday and today, the people of Czech Republic went to the ballot, and there is actually some good news because they've got their own version of President Donald Trump. He's also a billionaire tycoon named Andrej Babiš. I really hope I'm not butchering that name. But he's really there to try to drain the swamp in Prague. And what he stands for with his policies, I would say, are very much in line with what MAGA stands for. So he wants to put a stop to the endless aid to Ukraine. He wants to cut back on EU regulations and he wants to put Czech workers first with real economic relief. This is amazing news. This is a big
Yeah.
blow for the European Union because for way too long they were really one united front, and we see that there's really a revolution of populist parties that are taking over. Now, I have a friend working in European Parliament, Teresi. She is a wonderful assistant. Um, when I was having a conversation with her when I was in Brussels this week, and I was asking her, what is your prospect on these elections? Given the fact that we know that in Europe we've got a very decent track record of the EU trying to infringe and rig elections to make sure that their desired regime is taking place. And she said so far she's very positive that these elections will be held fair, especially given the fact that, this MAGA party is actually leading the polls. Of course, we have to wait for the results. As the moment of filming, people are still able to vote, so we don't even know what the results are looking like. But if we can believe the polls, this will be a win for the populace. And you have to understand that, if you want to change something within inside of your country, mostly you have to do it within an EU level as well. So it's good to
Yes.
know that we are forming a bloc of conservative patriots within Europe because so far we only had, if I may be very honest, so far it's been only President Viktor Orban of Hungary who was able to stand tall against the tyranny of the EU.
Yeah.
And, this week they had the Copenhagen summit. It was about sending more money, more aid to Ukraine. As always, they got 4 billion extra in aid. It's interesting how they always get more money, but nobody's checking where that money is going to.
Oh, I
But
know.
also, they wanted to accelerate the accession of Ukraine within EU. Now, thank God, Hungary is saying we do not want that because at the end of the day, it's not in our interest.
No.
And he wants to use his veto rights to block that from happening. Now, the veto is designed so that member states can protect their own interests in case the European Union is trying to override it. And for the
Hmm.
longest time, the European Union is now trying to get rid of these veto rights so they can have full control over the decisions being made. I'm very grateful what President Viktor Orban is doing, but it would be good for him to have some people backing him, especially within the European Council. And it's nice to see that we're having a shift. People are waking up. We're done with sending endless money to Ukraine in a war that never seems to end. At the same time, we see that the amount of millionaires are increasing in Ukraine and people are getting poorer and poorer within Europe. The energy prices are still rising. People are still
Yes.
paying paycheck to paycheck. We just cannot send more money. This war needs to end. And sending more money
Agreed.
to Ukraine will not end it. So I think, coming back to the Czech elections, if if he wins, uh, Andrej Babis, it's not only a win for Europe, but actually also for America. As sooner as we end the war in Ukraine, the sooner we benefit from it, and you as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the whole world will benefit from peace. This war in Ukraine needs to end. We've got to stop funding it. It just can't go on. Zelensky needs to come to the table, make an agreement with Putin. And I know he wants his territory back, but at the end of the day, I feel like it's at the point where some of it is just going to have to be sacrificed, even if it's just the Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine. They wanted to leave anyway, so this is nothing new. So maybe that's the solution, but the bottom line is we need peace in the region. We can't have these wars going on forever, especially when on the verge of potential global conflict in so many places now, with drone incursions and other things that have happened around that. And there's a pretty big concern that from Zelensky, several European leaders have quietly mentioned he apparently has a number of Russian drones that were seized, and there's some real concern that Zelensky may perpetrate a false flag attack on a allied nation in order to trigger Article 5 NATO and force everyone else to get involved. So hopefully that isn't the case, but it does seem to be. The truth does seem to be that he, at the very least, was able to successfully seize a large number of Russian drones somewhere, and that they may be repurposing them for a false flag attack, flying them into Poland or somewhere else nearby. Now, I actually want to go back to something you said about Moldova in their elections. So, is this similar to what we saw in Romania, where we kind of anticipated one result? We had a populist candidate, George Simeon, that was there, that was leading in the polls. Then suddenly the election comes around, and oh no, look, here's an extra million votes that came in from for our workers that are outside of the country, our citizens that are working abroad. We just magically an extra million votes came in, and look, now we ended up with Dan. Oh, I always forget his name, instead of George Simeon. And this was after Kalin Georgescu's victory, which they invalidated for dubious reasons, we'll just say. Fake foreign election interference that we later found out was paid for by the other party, the leftist party that's been in control of Romania. So,
Yeah.
what just happened in Moldova?
Well, I'm very glad that you let me talk about it because, this is a personal issue for me. I am very grateful that I got to grow up in the Netherlands, and I will always consider that my fatherland. But at the same time, I do have my roots in Moldova. So growing up in the EU, knowing how it has actually ripped us from all of our freedoms, I'm very much concerned of the future that awaits for Moldova. And I can talk about it for hours. But to give you a brief summary, what happened is, first and foremost, a couple of years ago, Maya Sandu became the president. Maya Sandu, you have to understand, was put in position thanks to Soros and the EU as their own puppet. 80%, for example, of the media is being funded by Soros, NATO, and the EU, and formerly US aid even. Now, the thing is that the EU has too much interest within the country. They cannot afford to lose their control there. For years, they didn't care about Moldova, but now that the whole situation has escalated with Russia, Moldova out of the sudden has become interesting for them because they are at the border with Ukraine. And don't forget, they also have this part of land which is called Transnistria, which was annexed by the Russians. And they still have some Russian military stationed there. Not a lot, but there's still some left there. And for 30 years, that was never an issue. That war has been fought within 3 days. People were still living in peace. Now it has become very delicate because let's not forget, not only the EU has an interest in there, so does NATO.
Yes.
So, because imagine NATO would send there some troops or they want to station there some of their guns, some of their weapons. Russia can see that as a provocation. And if Russia starts to retaliate, then Romania will step in as well because at the end of the day, Moldova is their little brother. They were one country for a long time. If Romania steps in, then bam, The rest of Europe is at war with Russia. So we need to prevent that from happening. It's a worst case scenario, but it is definitely a scenario that is on the table. Did they rig the elections? 100%. I mean, look at Russia. They have 500,000 Moldavians living there, which is like half a million. But there were only two ballot stations opened. So they on purpose ensured that people, it would be very complicated for people to actually use their democratic right to vote. People in
Yeah,
Transnistria, they were blocked for the longest time as well to go and vote. And I'm not saying that people should go and vote for a pro-Russian party. Absolutely not. But at the end of the day, I do believe that the people of Moldova have a right to choose a party, the
agreed.
representatives who they want. And it's not up to Brussels, it's not up to Ursula von der Leyen, it's not up to Soros, it's not even up to NATO. And this is interesting. I did this interview with a lady. Her name is Victoria Fortuna, and she's the party leader of the Partido Moldova Mare. And she was telling me that prior she was working as a procureur, and she wanted to investigate the corruption within Maya Sandu's presidency and intelligence service. And as a result of that, she got prosecuted and she was banned from running for office. This is what they
Unbelievable.
do. They turned it's what they did with Trump as well. They turned the judicial system and politicized it, and they used it to silence opponents that are
Yeah.
not in line with the globalist agenda, because Maya Sandu is not serving the interests of the people of Moldova. She's serving the interests of Europe, of Soros, of NATO.
Yeah. Well,
And
well, to your point, I was just going to say this. Like you made a point that the people of Moldova, even if they are going to vote for someone that is pro-Russian, whatever exactly that means, now they should still have the right to self-determination. The fact of the matter
exactly.
is that whether it's the European Union or George Soros or whoever that is instead financing the political outcomes they want and then censoring the people, only having two polling locations for 500,000 people, for 500,000 people, having two polling locations is ridiculous. In any other country, we would consider that to be, third world 10 pot dictator BS. It's unacceptable because you're trying to suppress a large amount of the population there. Moldova is not a very big country. Like you said, it used to be a, part of Romania. They are, their own nation now, and they deserve the right to be self-determined. This is what we've seen in so many other countries, this heavy-handed approach from, European globalists outside of their borders to force the outcome that they want, or when they don't get the outcome they want, erase that election. So that's been the scary thing
Yeah.
here. I mean, there's been a number of elections now in different European countries that it looked like someone that was a populist, someone that was a nationalist, that wanted to get back to their individual rights for their country, get back to self-determination, that they've been ahead in the polling, and suddenly the election comes through, and all of a sudden, they're down a few million votes. Something suspicious happened. Um,
I
and
mean,
we
Maya
keep.
Sandu even announced that
Mhm.
before we knew what the end results would be, she said that if the results were in favor of a pro-Russian party, she would annul the elections. So even before the elections had finished, people were like able to cast their ballot. She already decided what the outcome had to be, and there's a video at an election a ballot station where they are
Yeah,
burning some of the ballots because they were
unbelievable.
not for Maya Sandu.
I mean, that's insane. Well,
And then
there's
they
one.
say, and then they claim, oh, Moldova has chosen a pro-EU path. Are you kidding me?
Well, I hope the Czech Republic can pull you guys out of this. Again, Viktor Orban needs some people to back him up. I know Poland's there in his camp sometimes, but even they got the globalists shoved down their throats recently.
Yeah.
I believe they now have somebody that is pro-Poland again back in that position. That Tusk is out of there, but again, this meddling. They cry about it and pretend that somehow the right is always doing this. That we're uh, subverting democracy or fear mongering or whatever. When in reality, it's exactly the opposite of that. So hopefully something happens there to turn things around. I want to quickly, because before we run out of time, also shift over to Germany. Um,
Yeah.
as our audience may or may not know, you had seven German AfD party members drop dead mysteriously. Well, one of them was 80 some odd years old and apparently did have some other medical issues going on. But the other six are suspicious, especially suspicious timing, dying within just a few weeks of the election, and the fact that the German police were refusing to release information about most of these. Now, again, I would totally believe that one of the other six may be natural causes, but for it to be seven deaths in that short of time span seems highly suspicious to me that there isn't some sort of government involvement in assassination. And when we get to another story that broke more recently, you'll see exactly what I mean.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. It's very good that you're mentioning that because the AfD, which is a patriotic conservative party in Germany, they have risen in polls lately. I think they're now at 36% even. They're very closing the borders, keeping Germans safe again, because we know that Germany is facing a lot of knife attacks by illegal aliens, and
Yes.
they have won the previous elections. They're not the biggest party, but they're the second biggest party. So what did they do? Right before they could take office, they were deemed as a security threat by the intelligence service, which basically means that they are being under surveillance 24/7. The government can spy on them. That's what it comes down to. There are even member states in Germany where if you are part of the AfD, you cannot have a public job
Yes.
anymore. So that would mean that you cannot be a police officer or you cannot be a teacher only because you are part of the AfD. It is terrible. This is pure tyranny, maybe even
Oh,
autocracy. And this is the hypocritical thing. Yesterday, the 3rd of October, it was the 35th anniversary of the unification of East and West Germany. And Macron and Merz, the two poster childs of globalism, came together
yeah.
to warn us. They were so kind to warn us because of the rising threats from autocracies to our liberal democracies. What a joke. And I was thinking to myself, Macron, wait a minute. You're trying to silence Rassemblement National, another conservative patriotic party who's also rising, who will win the next elections, who will get you out of your office. You're trying to silence them. That is the hallmark of an autocracy, silencing your opponents. And it's the same for Merz, what he is doing, silencing the AfD. So it's interesting. Are they trying to warn us from themselves? Because that would actually be for the first time that they're not lying to us. That would be a first I would very much like to experience. And I have to think about what JD Van said during his wonderful Munich speech. The real threat that we are facing here in Europe is within our own. It's the real danger is at home. The real
Yes.
danger are our politicians. The
Yeah.
nice thing, to put something positive to it, is that people have had it. There have been protests both in Berlin and as well in Paris against militarization. They don't want to send more
Yes.
aid to Ukraine. They want to maintain peace. Frankly, sending more weapons is not going to guarantee us more peace. The austerity, but also the social inequality that we're facing because of the mass migration. People don't
Yes.
have any social security anymore. Enough has been enough. So I don't know. I think Merz and Macron, they're living in some sort of like delusional world where they truly, either they're really stupid and they really have no clue on what's happening, or they're really, really evil and they don't care. I think
I
it's the
think
latter.
Yeah, I agree. I think it really is that they're evil and they don't care. This isn't the result of failed policies or trying something and having it backfire. I mean, at this point, it is willful destruction of Europe. They use immigration as a weapon to create a wedge between people, and then now that people are finally starting to rise up and push back against that and push back against the war in Ukraine, not wanting to spend their money anymore, to focus on their own nation and protecting their own people and making Germany great again, or Romania great again, or every other country in Europe, making them great again, focusing on their own people and their own needs. But when the government says, "Oh, well, that's hate speech, that's evil, that's violent, that's akin to being a Nazi," and again, trying to censor the message, censor the people, and ignore reality. I mean, the fact of the matter is, this leftist globalist dream is dead. People have seen it and they don't want it. But to get back to Germany, get back on target here a little bit. Recently, this is how insane they are. German Left Party calls for assassination of AfD's Alice Weidel after justifying killing Charlie Kirk. Um, and they're using taxpayer money to put out this ad campaign. It's literally a poster. It says "Aim here," and then has a bullseye on her head. Again, encouraging assassination. If that isn't what it is, again, if things were reversed, if AfD had put out a poster like that against any of the opposition parties in Germany, they would be calling them literal Nazis. They'd be arresting them, hauling them in for interrogation, and they'd never be seen again. But again, they encourage and promote violence against the right, and nothing's done about it.
You know what? I want to talk about again about Pim Fortuyn. First and foremost, because I'm such a big admirer of him and his policies and what he stood for, but also because he really was patient zero. He was the first one that they had to shut down because he was gaining too much influence and he was set to become the prime minister. And one thing he said in one of his last interviews before his timely passing was he said, if something would happen to me, the left cannot say that they didn't have any involvement in it because they allowed this hate climate to exist.
Yeah,
And we see it still happening now. People were cheering the moment that they thought President Donald Trump was shot and it killed him. They were celebrating it. This is lunacy. Same with
yeah,
Charlie Kirk, saying it is justified. What kind of democracy have we become to think it's okay to brutally murder anyone for simply having an opinion? And the left, they cannot claim that they have nothing to do with it because they are inciting that hate. They are behind it. They will maybe not be the person that are pulling the triggers, but they are
yes,
encouraging those who are willing to pull the trigger, which makes them equally complicit in it. It's
yeah.
terrible. I pray for Alice. I've met her when I was in Hungary. She's a wonderful, wonderful, warm person. I really pray for her safety. I really do.
Oh, agreed. And yeah, you and I met with AFD over in Belgium when we were there, and all
Yeah.
all of them are getting death threats. Like this is nothing new. We were with Christine Anderson and a number of their other party members. I can't remember what Harold's last name was now, but yeah, same thing. They're under constant threat. They're all painted like they're Nazis, and again, this has to stop. It's the same thing that did lead to Charlie Kirk's assassination. Here is when you're calling your political opponents Nazis, fascists, evil all the time, it just becomes acceptable when it's not just their opposition in politics saying it, that it's your media. That's where it really becomes dangerous. And that's where you do inspire these psychopaths that do go out and murder people. And as we've seen here, especially, but around the world, is the vast majority of this violence is emanating from the left. I don't know if their ranks are just filled with mentally ill people or it's been 10 years, 20 years of this now, of this hype of constantly demonizing their political opposition, if it's just become acceptable for them. Or maybe, again, like I've said before, it's just a political philosophy based on evil. So maybe that's the kind of people that ascribe to that are evil to begin with, which makes it even, also they're more susceptible to committing evil acts like assassination, attacking police officers, attacking law enforcement, rioting, and everything else. But I want to thank you for joining us here today on the Glazov Gang. Any words of wisdom you'd like to leave our audience with, and where can they find you?
Oh, well, first and foremost, I want to thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak out here. I want you to know, if you're watching this, is that in Europe we are waking up, and you can see it in the desperate attempts of the globalists. How, this is the reason why they're rigging the elections, why they need desperately Moldova to be part of the EU, why they need to have the war in Ukraine, because it's the only thing that still gives them a certain type of legitimacy. But they know that they're losing that control, because people of Europe and also the UK with that, we will not accept this tyranny any longer. You see it in the protests, you see it how people are standing up for themselves. Times are changing, and their time has come to an end. So this is the
Well
good news I
said.
really wanted to share with you.
Well, thanks again for joining us today, Scarlett. Thank you, Jamie, for letting me sit in and host the Glazoff Gang for you. Again, guys, remember this is a fan-generated show. They count on donations from viewers like you to get out the word, to get out the stories, the interviews that the mainstream media doesn't want you to see. And you can help ensure the Glazoff Gang continues for 10 more years if you go to jamieglazoff.com and make a contribution. Once again, thank you for joining us today, and we'll be back next week with even more.